I went to a lot of meetings with Vice Chancellor, Principal and so on. The question that you may have are pretty obvious questions. But just remember, the systems in India are a very nascent system. NIRF is only 1 year old. So I think it's a bit too early to either analyze or debate or even compare these systems. NAC has become mandatory only a year back. So I would just say that if you have any questions, of course, we can discuss them. But remember that these are ongoing process. And just remember, even the education system in India is really not that old. So when British left us at independence, you saw the data that you had just 20 universities and about 400 to 500 colleges and not more than 1.2 lakh students. Now take that through the time of very hardships, economic hardships the country went through, and today you have 847 universities, 50,000 colleges. Said I can throw a lot of numbers. You saw a number in Dr. Sirohi's. So by any standards you want to look at higher education, you would see this an enormous expansion, much needed expansion. So we have roughly, the figure was 2.67 crores, which Professor Sirohi, actually figure is touching almost 3 crore students in higher education. Now imagine any system. Those of you who are scientists here, this is an explosive system. It's in sheer physics, you would say the thermodynamics of this, the entropy of this stuff is extremely high. In this, now we're beginning to have a narrative of the quality. So if you look at UGC mandate, UGC says access with equity and excellence. Excellence narrative is a recent one. I mean, President of India would say, call all of us and say that none of our university, including the IITs, are not in top 200, etc. So whenever we either question, I think there are two narratives running. Spectacular expansion, very large number of people, families which had never access to education are being educated, present company, you see a lot of students here, versus suddenly we start to look at expansion. I'm going to touch about it, but I'm going to look at the problem of higher education in its totality. What are the challenges? Are these challenges specific to India or are these challenges world over? My contention is the university world over is under a huge amount of stress, and I'm going to very quickly build it. But what I would like to start with is, what is university or what is a higher education institution? Where does it come from? Was it there all the time? Or is it something which we are beginning to conceive, especially the quality in higher education? Is it more recent phenomenon? So what is the idea of university? Where does it come from? So I'll touch upon this. Very successful university, when we start comparing either time or QS or Shanghai, not top 200, actually they all originate from the Western idea of university. And I'll come to that in a minute. I just want to say that there were universities 1,000-year-old. There were universities in India which are more than 1,500-year-old. Takshila, Nalanda. After that, there is Bologna, Padua, Oxford, Cambridge, a whole lot of them. And then, of course, 300 years back across the Atlantic. But if you look at the time scale, this is a very recent phenomenon. University per se, as an idea, was really as old as the first time defined by a man called Newman. John Newman, for the first time, he was a monk, an Irish monk who taught at Oxford, who studied at Oxford, gave series of lectures. Those lectures were published as a book by Longman in 1907. Actually, it's 1807 is wrongly written, it's 1807. He simply said the university is a space where everybody comes from everywhere and stays in that space and learn from each other. There was no mention of research when Newman talked about it. This is Oxford almost at its peak. We are looking at Oxford last couple of 100 years. But even before Newman said what Newman said and became famous for publishing the book. It is actually this is von Humboldt, which he's a Persian philosopher who actually gave idea of university, and there were three pillars of this university. I'm just very quickly running through this because it's fundamentally important to understand where do we come from. So the three very important idea of university research was that for the first time, teaching and research is a fundamentally important to university. Freedom of thought, as well as freedom to express, as well as freedom to teach what you want to teach, is completely university's business. And more than that, and this is the time when universities were governed paid by government, self-governance of university, and it's a crucial point in Indian context. The complete self-governance of the university was in university hands. So who university should hire, who university should fire, who should be the student at university, what research university should do, was entirely left to the university. So this is the Western model. Or we all keep comparing ourselves what happening in America, what is happening in Germany, but all universities were based on these two ideas. So remarkably successful. They were fundamental agent for changes. These universities where most of the research was done. But the amazing output of research, because the ideas were free floating and they did whatever they wanted to do. They're totally flexible and adaptable in their approach. And government over the time, this is now we are moving into last 4 decades. The university were doing their business, only 4 to 5% people access universities, no more. And I'm talking about 1960s. Till 1960, only 4 to 5% people accessed education. Middle classes in Europe rose. The number of middle classes was very, very large. And they started asking for, you don't have to look at the slide, university admission. University became a symbol of status both for men and women. Also it started becoming idea of job relationship. If you went to university, you got a job. If you didn't get to university, you found difficult to job. This began to happen in the late 60s. In Bologna, and soon after, there's a huge conference in Bologna, and soon after the conference in Lisbon, the governments were still saying what I said to you earlier. The free thinking, research should be done for the research sake, etc. But the time has started changing now. I think government have already started saying that the research cannot be done for research sake. So what are the challenges? I come straight to the challenges to the university, and when I say university, I really mean higher education, whether IIT or NITs or triple IITs or national, in Indian context, consider them all. In Indian context is extremely complex. You have private industry, you have deemed to be university, you have autonomous colleges. So I'll come to Indian scene in a minute. But consider this is happening in the best places in the world. It's happening in Germany, happening in Austria, happening in England. So till 60s, university education reached only 4 to 5%, middle classes rose, as I told you. Now this is a time when globalization starts happening. I'm still taking you towards the university in the West, very successful model. Government started looking at this as a crucial asset. I'm talking about now late 70s. Government suddenly realized these universities are very important. Otherwise, government had just given university, they could do whatever they wanted to do. Sources of new knowledge, they were novel thinking, they begin to now bringing economic growth coming out as an engine, what is being done at the university. They were now suddenly, and I say suddenly in 70s, university were supposed to provide skilled personnel in all areas. There's doctors, lawyers, business management people. This is happening when some of us have started going to university. They are agent for social. Not only you have to do research. So university were under tremendous pressure. They have to produce people to find jobs. They have to do research. They have to look at economic growth. So government, in some sense, started driving the agenda. We haven't realized. In fact, we today sit here where the funders or the funding agency really drive the agenda. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say it in exactly the way it is. Now it'll come in a minute. The economic pressures are huge, so they're supposed to do everything. So globalization, massification of education, everybody wants to go to university, and something which fundamentally changed education is the invention of internet, accessing ICTs, availability of click of a mouse you can get information about it. These three things have changed education, and I think entirely irreversibly. I don't think we'll ever go back to what universities were in 60s and 70s. But that doesn't mean it is a bad thing. It is just the way things are. So what is the challenges of university or higher education is, university heavily were funded by public money. They are still heavily funded. And if you look at Indian scene, in India, universities are completely funded by the government. NAC is completely funded by government. NIRF is completely funded by government. So we are completely funded by government. But that said, and you may or may not be surprised, that 60% of all Indian education right now is in private hands. So when I say we are funded by government, the large number of central universities, this and that, we are only looking at 48%. And as we move, it is quite clear that this number might get even more accentuated. And I'll come to the funding part in a minute. Are there any direct benefit of university to examine? Should we examine this question? Should university worry about other economic benefit to the country? Research is something which I think in the context of the present meeting is very important. Research and teaching only in the area of national interest. And national, I don't mean Indian right now. I'm actually talking about completely rest of the world. This is happening world over. So if you are funded by Gates Foundation or Wellcome Trust Foundation, the agenda is driven by Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust Foundation and not by the university. So in a very silent mode, without realizing, whole lot of research and especially scientific research. And let me get this out of the way. When we are looking at NIRF or NAC or for that matter Times ranking or Shanghai ranking, 90% of this business of publication or research output is really scientific research. Other kinds of research, as in social sciences, archaeology, history, political science, all that have taken a backstage. So when we talk about research, almost synonymous with scientific research. And scientific research is extremely expensive. And many times when we talk about quality, I think often this is forgotten. And when we say we are not in top 200 universities, we often forget that the scientific research is extremely expensive, infrastructure expensive, and what is almost always forgotten, the running of the infrastructure that you establish is even more important. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to take it very quickly. This is what I said. The research is absolutely fundamentally crucial to the university or higher education system. Suitable settings are for basic research, and if you were here for the Nobel Prize lecture day before yesterday, on quantum physics, the point came out very clear. The most spectacular benefit that you see of scientific research really comes from basic research. They do not come from applied research. There far, to my mind, in my narrative, far too much emphasis on directed research. The research should go this way, that way. Actual benefit, internet came from basic research, lasers came from basic research, vaccines have come from basic research, the whole amount of things have. Another thing which keeps coming, and I saw in the first speaker slide also, universities are asked to innovate. I think this is personal, this is my personal opinion, I think a lot of people will disagree with me. Innovation is something very misguided at the university. You can say we should have innovative way of teaching, innovative research or doing this or whatever, but innovation really is not university job. It's a myth that university produces a whole lot of research which cannot be exploited. You the European Union famously had a meeting in 2001 and said education, research and innovation are 3 points of a triangle. I think it is highly overstated. What university can do, or what higher education institution can do and actually do very well, including in India, is to produce people who can innovate. Innovation space is outside the university space. It needs industry, it needs trials, it needs commitment, needs production, it needs testing. So I personally think innovation business has to be dealt with slightly seriously. University higher education can create human, they always have done so. Or IAS officers, bureaucracy, people in education, people in medicine, they all have come from university. They should continue to come from. But university can't become the production houses of a pharma company or so on. I think one example, which is Stanford and Silicon Valley, sometimes runs ahead of its narrative, and I think we have to be very cautious. So this is something which is very close to my heart, but I think I'll just run through. Often, I feel personally, I'm a scientist by training, I've done science research, but I think a lot of emphasis on science and technology finding all solution of society is a misplaced notion. Science does spectacular stuff, there's no question about it. But humanities, social sciences, fine arts are fundamentally important, the research in them is important. Even to accept science, and we are struggling in this country, and this is the right time to mention, we struggle in this country. There's a huge amount of good science available, but acceptance of science, whether it is GMOs, whether it's vaccination, whether it is cervical cancer vaccine acceptance, etc., etc. You need people who understand people. You need people who can debate with people to put across an idea, and I think this is a great challenge to university. We mustn't just run away with the narrative of science and technology. So I would also raise the question, what is education for? Therefore, so we have challenges in education, we challenge research, teaching, quality, etc. But what is education for? And I think we should ponder for a minute. This is really to be able to learn, to be able to think, and to be able to develop analytical. If you've done all these three, then I think your education at whether it's IIT or triple IIT, of course you'll get skill. Getting skills of opening a computer or whatever, you can always get those skills. I've heard in this country many times, oh, your graduates are coming out with not unemployable. This comes from Narayan Murthy's or whoever. Maybe so. It's an expanded system, quality may not be whatever, but university is not supposed to skill you in that sense. Skills you get regardless, and you will get on the job anyway. But university education is to answer through scholarship, through debates, and through leadership. University job is to produce leaders. Leaders in academia, leaders in industry, leader in any sense of the word. Very important is the university space or higher education is not about numbers, not about CGPA, it's not about ranking. It's also about how do you get your moral value, where do you pick your ethical value, where do you learn to behave. I think it's crucially important, and in the current narrative probably it's missing. And current crisis, I'm not talking about crisis in India, crisis everywhere in the world, whether it is Syrian war or it is Middle East or it is left wing, right wing, middle wing, whatever, is not just science and technology. It's not only economics. A whole lot of it is cultural. So very quickly, these data you've seen, so I'm not going to spend any time, I'm going to finish it here. Indian system, as I said, the second largest in the world. US used to be the number one. China is the largest, and we are the second largest. In this, so this data you've already seen, I just wanted to share. I'm not going to belabor. Very large number of students from 50 to a very large number of university from 20 to 800. 400 to 40,000 colleges. It's a huge spectrum, and I think we should be proud of it. We should be absolutely proud of having achieved what governments over the years have achieved. I just wanted to highlight this, my last two slides. If you see the expansion of higher education from 2000 to 2015, this is a remarkable phase. And I, for one, do not panic when we say this doesn't function, that doesn't function, ranking is not working, we are not. So what? But look at the expansion. Look at the number of people getting into higher education, both from teaching, learning, researching, and people who are getting education. So, I think. So, challenges in higher education, access, this is Indian scene, access, equity with excellence, it remains a continued challenge, will remain a continued challenge, and should remain a continued challenge. The gap between access, those who want to get into university education and are not able to get, is very, very large. Our GER is still hovering around 20. We wish to, by 2020, to become 30, which is equal to Brazil or equal to South Africa. Should that happen, our system has to expand 33% more. So that's a food for thought. The huge gap, the quality of higher education, international ranking, I, for one, at this given time, won't worry too much about it. We need to consolidate what we have expanded. I think we must get into a huge consolidation phase right now, but that's my personal opinion. Balance in research and teaching is a word over a problem. Because of these rankings, Times ranking, QS ranking, all universities, so a very fancy professor at Stanford or at Oxford or Cambridge actually doesn't want to teach because his job is to get very high quality papers. So I think we have to, all universities have to find, certainly in India, but a balance has to be found. So the last slide is, so when I went as the 7th Pay Review Commission, we went all over the country. When we discussed this with Vice Chancellor and principals, a trade union and so on, I can promise you that we did not go beyond salary structure problem and the promotion problem. We had whole days meeting. So clearly the stakeholders are still very much looking at the system which is still not stabilized. We have a lot of regulatory mechanism. Professor Sirohi showed you. We have, to my mind, we have far too many regulatory mechanisms. NAC, you heard enough. So use of information and communication technology is something which may, in a very big manner, change the way we do education today. Whether that will be for good or bad, I think we'll count that one day, but there's no running away from this. I don't know how many of you know this, that MHRD has on its own portal called SWEM, has now erected more than 500 MOOCs courses. MOOCs courses started in 2011 are free of cost. Those of students who are sitting here, anybody who wants to get any kind of knowledge, it is at a click of a mouse. But MOOC course is very disciplined, you have to be organized to take it, but amount of knowledge, good quality, very high quality knowledge available for free, and I insist that absolutely free of cost, is enormous. You can do a course in biostatistics, you can do a course on immunology, you can do a course on skill training or whatever. So, I think I'll stop here. I think maybe if you have, the time was a little bit short. What I wanted to just say that in India especially, we are expanding from 5 IITs, we have 18 IITs. We have new institution called ICERs. So government, it's not that the government is not spending money, but what needs to be spent, it is I think 1/3 of what needs to be spent. A lot of people have suggested to government many times over that 6% of GDP must be spent on education. And if we take 2% of that in higher education, I think that is when we should start talking about quality. But very quickly, a last comment, but at the same time, money is not everything. I don't think just throwing money will produce high quality. I think we need amazing quality of leadership, discipline, self-governance by the teaching community, and huge discipline from a student. So I thank you for this.